The Holy Gospel according to John, the 13th chapter. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so I say to you now, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. This is one of those nights that everybody's up in the front pew. Welcome. I like it. I think we should just close off that back section. What do you think? No? All right. This night is filled with wonder and remembering. This is a night when the church gathers and hears Jesus as he shares with his disciples that final meal before his betrayal, before his arrest, before his trial, before his crucifixion. In John's Gospel, it is the night of significant teaching. And that teaching comes with visual aids, basins and water. This is a night when the people of God receive profound gift of love. Jesus becomes a slave because that's who washed people's feet when they came into your house. Jesus becomes a slave for his disciples. It is so familiar to 21st century ears that people don't realize the scandal of it. This is the night when Christians begin to remember together our very own Passover. This is a night when the Christian people all around the world gather to hear the story that will unfold tonight and tomorrow night and into the celebration of the resurrection on Sunday. is a story that shows God's love. This is the night when Paul reminds the faithful that Jesus called and then instituted the gift of Holy Communion, which we celebrate with these four for the first time tonight. Indeed, Jesus commanded us to share this meal in remembrance of him, remembering that in this body and blood, in this bread and wine, we receive, should I do a pop quiz? Forgiveness, salvation, and all the rest of you, do you remember your small catechism? Life. Yeah, some of you look pretty freaked out when I did that. Not only did Jesus give new meaning to that meal that the Jewish people knew as the Seder, where they were to remember all the mighty deeds of God, Jesus gave it this new meaning and taught them to love one another as he has loved them. That love is to be lived out in actions. It's what we do more than what we say. Even taking the role of servant and caring for others. Doing the dirty work, if you will, of love acted out in daily life. It is a wonderful night filled with gift and love and service embodied as example from our Lord. It is a night when these young members indeed have joined us. For many of them have been yearning to share this meal with us. I see it in the eyes of our younger members. They've wanted to taste this promise of life, this promise of grace that Jesus offers in his body and blood and in the bread and wine. This is big. This is a night of profound misunderstanding, too. You heard it in the story. Maybe it goes right by us. We don't quite hear it. When Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples, he gets to Peter. Did you hear this? And what does Peter do? Oh, there are so many ways to be critical of Peter for what he does. For tonight, I want to offer the notion that Peter just didn't understand. You see, Peter was indeed scandalized by Jesus, his teacher, his rabbi, his leader, his Lord, taking the role of a slave, kneeling down and washing his feet. It was just plain wrong. And we know, like so many other times in the story of Jesus and his disciples, Peter was pretty clear that whatever Jesus was doing just couldn't possibly be right. And he was pretty comfortable with letting Jesus know when he thought Jesus was getting it wrong. Yet Jesus responds, "You do not understand what I am doing. You'll get it later." Peter presses on, "You will never wash my feet." You see, Peter suffers from certainty. There are so many good, faithful people in our world who suffer from this kind of certitude that they know the ways of God's kingdom with absolute fact. Then Jesus says it. Did you hear it? Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. When I was an intern pastor down in Boonville, Arkansas, the president of the congregation was really proud of her intern pastor, and so she liked to show him off at every opportunity. And so there was a cancer survivors event, and she wanted the intern pastor to come and be a part of that, to pray. Pray for those who were survivors, prayers of thanksgiving. Pray for those who were continuing to struggle with cancer. Pray for those who were grieving. Those who had not prevailed in the face of cancer. And so as part of the program, they had this giveaway of kind of door prizes, and everybody had drawn a number as they came in. They drew my number, and I went up and received this box. I was absolutely certain, because of its shape and size, I was absolutely certain that it was a box of chocolates. Now, some of you know, I like chocolate. They encouraged me to open the box, see what's inside. I think the council president knew what was inside, but I was certain it was a box of chocolates, and I didn't open that box. I thought maybe I'd just hold it. It's possible, though I don't quite remember, that I didn't want to share what was in the box. Whatever the case, I didn't open it during that event, and then I went home, and I took it, and I opened it, and what did I find but kitchen shears? I was absolutely certain that I knew what the gift was and what the gift looked like. I was absolutely certain that I knew how it ought to go, and I didn't, well, I lost the opportunity to give appropriate thanks because I was certain what it ought to look like. I wonder if for us in these days, we don't have times when we have such confidence that we know what God's kingdom looks like, that we know what being faithful looks like, that we know what it ought to be to live God's love and to receive God's love, that we don't open the package. I think it's that kind of misunderstanding that Peter had going on that night. You see, sometimes as a pastor, as I'm in conversations with people, it is hard for them to accept that it's not what we do, but the gift is what God does for us. First through the waters of our baptism, and then through the sacrament of the table. There is nothing that we can do to earn or merit or deserve this kind of love from God. And yet, we live in a culture that celebrates, idolizes, does hero worship of people who are rugged, independent individuals. That individualism is the kind of thing where we celebrate the self-made man. And so it is a profound scandal that God has already done the work and there is nothing we can do to help God out. It's our own way of saying, you will never wash our feet unless I wash you. Tonight is a night of submitting to God's grace extended in magnificent fashion. Tonight is a great night when that grace comes in God serving humanity from the position of the most lowly. That grace comes in the love of tender and intimate response of human need. That grace comes in a call, indeed a commandment to love one another. That grace comes in a call to serve. That grace propels the faithful out into the world to share the good news that we receive in Jesus Christ in what we say and what we do. Let us not be so sure, so certain of what the gift is and means that we do not open it, that we do not unpack it, that we refuse it. Rather, let each one of us who are gathered here be open to the absolute truth of God's love that is enacted, God's love that is spoken, God's love that is shared for all people, for all creation. This is the night. This is the night that begins the journey into the deepest mysteries